Ladies and gentlemen, we've got an update as it pertains to the current Donald Trump Bibi Netanyahu relationship, with Trump in a phone call with Netanyahu getting angry over the situation and the aggressiveness that Netanyahu has towards Iran. Remember, the Israelis originally wanted a joint military strike on Iranian nuclear facilities. That was shot down by Trump and pretty much everyone within the administration outside of Waltz. They reassigned Waltz, and it came out that Tulsi was against it, Vance was against it, Trump was against it. I mean, Vance was even against actions against the Houthis. Now we've got a ceasefire with them without talking to Israel. Trump really wants peace within the Middle East. If you look at everything recently, all the major stuff that comes out, it is true that there is a very, very, very basically 0% chance, I would say, the U.S. will be involved in a war with Israel against Iran. There is too much stuff that's come out. Originally, people were saying, well, no, it's being planted. But now you've got the stuff about a phone call you can see between Trump and Netanyahu. And this makes total sense. There's no way that Trump is going to have his administration mired in whether it's a proxy war, whether the United States is helping with just intelligence, or maybe even troops, especially troops within the Middle East fighting for Israel against Iran. It's just not going to happen for the administration. This is everything that MAGA is not, in terms of the U.S. and specifically the Republican Party getting over the obsession in the Middle East and getting over the neocon ideology, going from nominating McCain in '08. I mean, W. Bush, obviously, then McCain, then Romney, now Trump. This is the exact opposite. It's the antithesis of what Trump wants. So there's got to be a 0% chance that the United States is involved in military action against Iran. And I'm guessing Trump is saying, if you want to strike their bases, we are not going to support it. And this is the reality. There's been several different reports within the past few weeks. People say, well, they're planted, it's not real. And then they started coping and saying, well, Netanyahu's the fall guy for Israel. But the reality is Trump has made it very, very clear where he stands in terms of the Middle East. We just saw his trip to the Middle East. It's normalizing relationships with the Gulf states. That was the original purpose of the Abraham Accords, to get Israel more help and more allies within the Middle East. It's normalizing relationships so the U.S. is not so entangled with Israel. That's why Trump wants Saudi Arabia in on the Abraham Accords. And you want to talk about helping and appeasing the Gulf states, you have a situation like lowering sanctions and eliminating sanctions on Syria. That's a historic thing. That hasn't happened in 50 years. Trump really wants there to be a more peaceful situation without significant U.S. involvement within the Middle East. And that's why you're seeing these updates and now a phone call where Netanyahu and Trump are disagreeing, Netanyahu wanting to be aggressive against Iran. There's been reports of the potential nuclear deal, which, going back, was originally ripped up by Trump. It was done under Obama back in 2015. Then Trump ripped it up a few years later, criticizing it. And now Trump wants a new one. There's a big argument on if Iran should have the ability to enrich uranium. Right now, it's been reported they're at around 60% enrichment. Under this new deal, Iran said they wouldn't go over around 3% enrichment. And the new deal, from what I heard, could be swung as a victory in terms of Trump getting a better deal than the one Obama got in 2015. But U.S. officials have said, well, no, we don't want any uranium enrichment. And so that seems to be a big sticking point when it comes to this nuclear deal. They had their 5th round of talks this past week. It's just so obvious that Trump wants to be diplomatic about this and does not. And the way this looks is that it's a Trump versus Netanyahu. He's going to get his way here. If there is strikes, it's going to be by Israel. It's not going to be with the help of the United States. This would be Israel against Iran. There's no reason for us to be involved in this. You can say, well, we don't want Iran to have nuclear weapons. I mean, Pakistan has nuclear weapons. There's a lot of countries that we don't like that have nuclear weapons. We can't be this global police force for countries 5, 6, 7, 8,000 miles away. This is the new age, 21st century thinking of, what do you want us to do here? Now, there is a hard line that the administration currently has against uranium enrichment for Iran, but you just have to wonder, at what point do you take the diplomatic win and say, all right, we will set something up to where we can swing this as a better nuclear deal than the one Obama got. You can enrich uranium to 2%, 3%, whatever the number ends up being during the negotiations, and you can swing it. Israel is extremely aggressive right now. They do want to strike Iran, and they want the U.S. help. And Trump is saying, no, it's not going to happen. We're not interested. And the administration is saying that as well. We heard the leaks from a month ago from the New York Times talking about it, talking about Netanyahu and the Israelis pushing Trump, pushing the administration for the joint strikes against the nuclear bases. And Trump is against it, and he's been against it. And all the leaks that come out. I mean, there was a statement that, well, it wasn't a statement, it was an interview Trump did to where he said him and Netanyahu are on good terms. But, you know, when it comes to the public, you want to keep a good image. Behind the scenes, everyone's saying Trump is sick and tired of Netanyahu, and we're just tired of having over-involvement within the Middle East. It's also come out, you guys see the G7 summit, that's going to be happening the 15th through the 17th of June, so that's less than a month. Donald Trump will be in Alberta, that's where it's taking place, and you did have the joint statement by Starmer, Carney, and Macron on the escalations within Gaza, basically saying they were not happy with what Netanyahu was doing. And now Trump in person is going to meet there, and you're talking about maybe some type of two-state solution, although even a two-state solution would be a small victory in terms of you're really not taking either side for Trump, but long-term it's not sustainable. So that's why Trump originally said, well, we're going to turn Gaza into an economic zone. We're going to annex it. That was a negotiation thing by Trump. He wasn't serious about it. That's what he always does. It's just like these trade war situations to where he'll say, well, we're going to hit you with a 50% tariff. We know that's not going to happen. And if it does happen, there'll be negotiations to get out of it within a few weeks. Whatever happens with Israel-Palestine, I mean, you could try and find a two-state solution. I think that'd be a victory for Trump and the administration. But even if it happened, we know it would very likely be short-lived based on the relations of the Israelis and the Palestinians. So maybe you could try and find a solution that way. There probably will be pressure. You take a look at what some of the leaders within the West are saying. They're very upset. They're very angry and pressuring Netanyahu. And Trump reportedly has pressured Netanyahu to, quote, wrap it up in Gaza, whatever that means. Because originally Trump said, well, it's going to be an economic zone. I mean, Gaza's completely leveled and destroyed. It has to be rebuilt by someone. My guess is it's probably going to be the Gulf states, the states that Trump visited, meaning Qatar, UAE, and Saudi Arabia in a joint effort, probably around $50 to $55 billion was the projections that I saw on that. But the big stuff here is that Trump is trying to find a solution to Israel-Palestine, and he's telling Netanyahu it's just not going to happen. There's no way in this current climate with what MAGA was and Trump was elected to do, we're not doing this thing to where they may or may not develop a nuclear bomb. I mean, is this 2003? We're not going to do this again. And the administration has to know. That's why we're seeing these reports every day that it's just not going to happen. Trump is stonewalling Netanyahu. This is like the 7th or 8th different report that I've seen. And at this point, we understand that Trump is just like, dude, we're not interested. We understand you don't want them to have a nuclear capability. Neither do we. But we're not going to escalate this thing. This is a repeat. We've seen this story in the Middle East. Especially conservatives, we're not happy. We're not happy with what happened under the W. Bush administration. It's not going to happen again. We're not going to waste $8 trillion. Now, I mean, they are still funding Israel, but, you know, it's like $4 billion per year. It's been more recently because of their war with Palestine. But either way, guys, I do think that Trump knows at this point there can be no U.S. involvement in a war with Iran. It just cannot happen in 2025. It's not acceptable, and Trump knows that. So that's why Trump has been very clear. And also other leaders within the West, even with what's going on in Gaza in terms of the broken ceasefire and the involvement now to where Netanyahu, feeling pressured by Western countries, is ramping up his attacks within the Gaza Strip. We'll see what happens at the G7, but it'll be interesting because you're going to have a lot of those Western leaders together to potentially talk about that situation and what the future can be there. There might be some big moves that happen at the summit in Canada. So that's another thing to look out for as well. Another thing right here, I'm just seeing this breaking: Putin slams West, ends talks and vows to chokehold them in return. How should Trump respond? Well, I'm guessing this is Putin's response to Trump telling Putin he needs to stop. And Trump said he doesn't know what's happening to Putin. Putin is bombing cities as he's having a phone call with Trump. And so Trump is very angry, and so Putin's responding. Well, it's tough because Putin understands and the Russians understand that they're going to always have the leverage as long as there's no U.S. troop involvement. The only thing that you could do in terms of the sanctions is you would have to collaborate with some of the Eastern countries like China and India to cut off Russian energy exports, which I don't know if that would happen. That would really hurt Russia. But even that, people say, well, sanctions don't do anything to Russia. So, listen, at the end of the day, there's only so much Trump can do in a war like this. And maybe Russia wants half of Ukraine. I don't know. To me, they don't seem too happy with their current war situation. They can say they're happy, but if they were happy, they would be negotiating a ceasefire right now. Obviously, evidently, they want something else. They want more in terms of the situation in the current war and where it is in terms of their control of the four oblasts in Crimea. And so, listen, we'll see. Maybe they anticipate if they enter a ceasefire, they're going to have to give up some of that territory. Now, would they? Because the West could come in and say, well, listen, we're going to force this, and they might not like it. But they don't even want to have a ceasefire right now. They're not interested. They say, well, if there's a ceasefire, we have to be close to a peace deal. So, and this was, I talked about this earlier today. So, we'll see what happens with it. It's very complicated just because we don't exactly know where Russia's head's at in terms of their standing on this war. If they don't like where they're currently at, why would they end it? I mean, they have all the advantage in terms of manpower. Yeah, sure, Ukraine does have better technology because of NATO warfare technology, but it really doesn't matter if the manpower is where it is. This is a war that's over 3 years old now, and that's why you're seeing the videos of Ukrainians very desperately trying to recruit more soldiers, and they say like they abduct some of these kids within Ukraine. That's how bad it's gotten. That's why we want the fighting to stop. And we'll see what happens in terms for this. But either way, guys, make sure you like the video down below. Also follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.